Hello, welcome to May 9th, 2022. I'm Kurt, and this is my daily good life meditation, an exercise that I do after I wake up to remind myself of my life objectives and principles and to see how I did applying them in the last 24 hours and then to plan for the coming day. First, last night and yesterday. Whew, rough night of sleep. I must have been up at 3:30. Not fully awake, but in that twilight awakeness. Gosh, only knows why. I mean, work is hard right now, but it's not worth losing my sleep over. I only have 2 meetings today. Sure, one of them is kind of an emergency meeting that the project manager on one of my projects, the vendor project manager, sent me. That's so, stuff to do. And sure, the sponsor on our end has some new ideas. So I guess that's probably the reason. Meetings that I don't know why, and not more changes, but additional fluctuation in the current change. That's enough to do the job. That's worth not. It's not certainly not worth not sleeping over, but that's enough to trigger me, so to speak, to not sleep. So I don't feel good. I don't feel rested. I'm exhausted. And I laid there for like an hour and a half, just exhausted, and knowing that I was making myself more exhausted by the process. See, I found myself enlisting the aid of some baby geese, goslings. Like from my bedroom window, I can see the golf course beyond, and we have a lake back there. Excuse me, and I can see. I've come to know the waterfowl. Excuse me, the regulars out there, by their coloration and the way they look. Mainly the ducks. There's a couple of ducks that have a very particular look. And I can kind of note their behaviors through the day. Anyway, there's geese too, a lot of them. At any one time you can probably see a dozen geese out there. So I don't know which ones these are, but I did notice yesterday, being spring, that there were goslings, 3 of them, in the company of what I assume to be their parents, a pair of fully grown geese, doing what waterfowl do with their little ones, walking. One parent leading the way with the 3 goslings between them, the adult on the back, coming down to the water's edge, the adult plopping in, and then the babies dropping in one after another, plop, plop, plop. And then the other adult, they're swimming across the lake. Typical waterfowl stuff. Anyway, I was thinking about them last night as I watched them drop off the golf course into the lake and head over towards the reeds, and I was thinking they must have a little safe place in the reeds to spend the night. And I was thinking about them when the storms come, because the storms can be pretty intense there. And I was thinking about how they must hunker down through the storm and just ride it out. And I thought to myself, that's what I can do right now. Just hunker down through this day, because once my sleep is ruined, I'm kind of spent. I'm starting the day finished. Guess it's good that I've got a job. Guess it's good that I've got a job because it'll squeeze some productivity out of me. Maybe that's the thing. I just don't care about the productivity so much anymore. I should. What did I see yesterday? I saw some social media meme that said that lately the adults are burned out by 35. And I'm more than 2 decades beyond that. And maybe that's what this is. I am definitely burned out. I'm definitely burned out on work. I don't want to work anymore. The trick is to not fall into a hole of not wanting to do anything anymore. I just can't imagine myself being that person. But like, what would I do? Well, first of all, if I wasn't working, I probably would have slept well last night. So probably now, right now, I wouldn't be feeling this way. Right now, I'd be willing to do I've already done my journal entry. I would be willing to do my video, assuming my health stays good. And then my day would proceed with reading and walking. Delicious. Sounds terrific. You know, stopping off at a park with a book, on my meander. Especially if we wind up in Japan. Reading and walking. Well, if it's a rainy day, I'll stay home. But if it's a nice day, I'll read and I'll walk through, meander the streets of Japan, stopping off at little parks, finding a little shrine to hide away in, maybe a Kiseten coffee shop, drop in for lunch somewhere, or take a bag lunch with me, most likely. Sounds great. Yeah. Okay, that's that dial, right? That dial, the principle of fun, looking at the here and now, and then moving the dial forward, looking, hoping for the future, enjoying, relishing that, and then twisting the dial backwards and remembering the past. Now, of course, there's this vision of the future that I have. I've never been one to want to live in the future, but I'm learning more and more that there's nothing wrong with that, as long as I'm pulling my weight in the here and now. But of course, that vision will have its problems, right? Namely, probably my health will start to go down. My mental acuity is already starting to flag. Yeah. Still, look a little forward on a moment like this, like the geese. Those little babies haven't even experienced the storm yet. The first one will come, and I wonder if they'll wonder what that is. They'll hunker in the reeds with their parents, wait out the storm. Drop, drop, drop of the water. Cold, wind. Yeah, the storms here in this valley are windy. That's what I'll do right now. I'm going to hunker down. I've only got 2 meetings, like I said. That's not a lot. It's an easy day. It's mostly the uncertainty. That's the thing that gets me. I mean, all the stuff that I have to deal with is on a relative scale, so incredibly easy to do. I guess I'm constantly worried about, satisfying those who expect things of me, namely my employer, and satisfying myself. I hold myself to high standards. Too high, perhaps. Anyway, that was that. As for yesterday, any challenges yesterday? I just, it was in terms of sometimes your mood is kind of so-so. Yesterday was a so-so Sunday. I finished my chores. I wasn't feeling physically altogether. I sat here in this chair and tried to read. Yumiko and Emily were out. Sat here in this chair and tried to read, and it just didn't do it. So I took the dogs and went for a walk, and that was better. But I just wasn't feeling it. I think that's going to be the nemesis of the future. Is when my body is my old body that's getting older. It refuses to cooperate. I have to arm myself. I have to prepare myself for this as my body begins to decline. Be ready to weather that perpetual storm. Perhaps perpetual. That's a heavy thought. Okay, now let's carry on from there. The good life. 7 objectives, 30 principles, as follows. Number 1, the first objective is to be always ready to die, to have everything in order, all my relationships in order, and my life work in order at this moment, and I do. 2 is to make a good and effective use of time, to not waste my days. To that end, did I earn a circle yesterday? Did I meet my criteria? Let's see. I wrote in my journal, yes. I made a video, yes. And I read it. I must have read 25, 30 pages yesterday, yeah. So I'm good. I get a circle for Sunday. That is the good and effective use of time. I also did other things that were good, but those are the criteria for the circle. The next one is to develop and maintain good and sound life principles. And I do that. That's the 7 and 30 that I dwell on every morning. Next is to cultivate good emotional reactions. I feel like I had something that's challenged me on that front yesterday, but I can't remember. But I know I did well. Maybe it was sometime earlier in the week. Next is to perform good actions, just to do good things when the opportunity presents itself. Then to recognize my true limits and my true opportunities so that I'm operating within the bounds of reason. What is reasonable for me to attempt. And then finally to do just one thing at a time and to do that thing slowly, to never multitask. I'm getting very good at that one, if I do say so myself. Especially at work, even when things are tough. Now my 30 principles. The first of these is the principle of war. To always be fighting against whatever ideas I already believe are true. To continue fighting and challenging them. As well as the things that others suggest are true. Or that I discover along the way that I suspect I should accept as true. Because I don't want to suffer believing things that are untrue. 2 is the principle of reason and the subprinciples of honesty, objectivity, and doubt. Where reason is the way that I approach the world to discern what is true using these basic tools and this basic frame of mind. Next is the Homunculus, the suggestion that we do not have a soul, but we do have a consciousness clearly that will be with us for some period of our life before our consciousness winks out and we die. Next is the Anchorhold, the suggestion that this consciousness that I call the homunculus is trapped inside our head, can't get out clearly, even though some people might claim it can. There's never been a good reason. I don't think that's true, other than the claims and interesting evidence that can't be replicated easily or at all. So we live within our brains, within our brain case. You know, consciousness seemingly an emergent property of the brain, of a living brain, of a conscious brain, if that's not circular. Next comes the home of good and evil, the idea that right and wrong are opinions that we hold, and that they live with us. Good and evil, right and wrong don't exist in the universe outside of sentient creatures that can think them up. Next is the principle of purpose. And my purpose is to be a good husband and father, to be a virtuous man, improving the well-being of others, particularly thinking creatures, and to share the story of my book, Going Alone, and the Good Life Creed, these 7 and 30. Next is the atomic principle. Everything is made of bits and pieces, atoms and molecules that are together for a while and then fall apart and get reused somewhere else. That's what this is, the structure of my body. It's just a temporary assemblage of atoms climbing uphill against the tide of entropy. Animated and organized by the energy that comes into the system, but very soon to fall apart. Will that be such a bad thing? Next is the principle of nature. Everything and everyone has a particular nature, some way that it is or they are. And it's good to recognize that and abide it, so that even if it's not a good nature, if it's a harmful nature, if we can recognize that, then we can avoid it or work around it, or perhaps strive to change it. Then comes the the pirate ride, the suggestion that free will is an illusion. We can make any choice we want, but in the end, the universe has so much influence on us and everything around us, and every precedent that has happened, every thing that came before us, it has some inertia that's tugging or pressing us towards one decision or the other. That what we ultimately decide is our brain seemingly making the decision is just the last bit of wind to push the decision one way or another. It's a subtle yet very evident thing, evident to my mind when I think about how not within a vacuum my brain operates. Free will then is not our own. It's not a thing. Neither is the universe determined. I can't prove this, but I deeply suspect it's true. Next comes the principle of maturity and the subprinciples of wisdom and fortitude, where we are mature when we remember our past successes and failures and have the strength to pursue the successes and avoid the actions that led to failure. Then comes the social principle. We need each other. Human beings do not operate well for very long alone. We need each other. And then the principle of public speaking, to be very careful about what I say and I write, to be deliberate in my communication, to choose my words carefully, using words and phrases that are well understood, easily understood, yet convey my meaning. Utilizing eloquence where I can to make my communication appealing. Because an appealing address is maybe hearkened to more as it penetrates deeper, gets to the mark. Also, I have to remember to never gossip, or gossip is talking about someone in a way that I would be embarrassed if I suddenly discovered they were standing there listening, maybe behind me, overhearing what I'm saying. I don't want to ever be talking that way about anybody, so I don't. Or I certainly strive not to, and I can't think of the last time I did. Next comes temperance and the subprinciples of suffering, simplicity, and apathy, which are the formula for a simple life, controlling how much we do, say, perform, compose, act, everything, just everything in moderation. And the subprinciples are suffering, because we suffer when we say no to ourselves. Simplicity, because a temperate life is a simple life. And apathy, which is the power to recognize what is outside of our control and to disengage our connection to it. Next comes, after temperance, comes the horror show. Life is a horror show, chock full of terror, horrible things happening all around us. And if not now, eventually to us, even if it's just for a brief moment when we die. The horror is everywhere. And I want to remember that. Not dwell on it, but be cognizant of it. Be sensitive to it, and especially to those who are experiencing it. Then comes that which must be borne, carried, be borne with an E. We have to bear the fact of the horror show, and we have to bear the responsibilities that we've assumed in life, namely our responsibilities as parents and adults, to get our kids into adulthood safely before we can then withdraw away if we want. Some adults choose to stay in the fray. I for one will withdraw, retire, move back. Maybe not so much step into the shadows, but step away from the fray. Next comes the Feast of Offal, which is what happens when we get upset and we decide to let the world know about it. People soak it up and it soils them. It's like a voyeuristic type of a thing. It soils them, it leaves a mark in their head. So I try to neither be the one who produces the feast, and when others are producing it, I try not to consume it. It's a bitter feast, after all. It's better uses of time. Next comes two principles, distraction and agency in the great indifference. Agency in the great indifference suggests that the universe is empty, that there is no God, that we are sentient creatures on this rock spinning around this sun, that we're alone, seemingly. Distraction is what we do to not see that fact. So we distract ourselves through all the things of life, school and work and family and hobbies and religion. These are all great distractions, so we don't have to see the emptiness. Next comes the best seat in the house. To not want to be anyone else or be anywhere else or be doing anything else, but to be okay where I am right now, to what I'm doing and who I am, all the while striving to be better. Next comes the Path of Wildness, which is a trick to get ourselves unstuck from a current life by deciding options forward and then collecting facts, thinking about them, deliberating them over, and then making a decision. And if we don't have enough facts, we're not ready to make decisions, then give ourselves more time to collect more facts and think more. Ultimately, however, because that could just go on forever, a decision needs to be made, a line drawn in the sand, and maybe we can turn to our gut. What does our gut feeling say about the options? I tend to lean with my first impression. What was my initial impression? Which is usually to do the thing I want to do. And then I do it, knowing that I'm taking a gamble and never having all the facts. Next comes the risk of avoiding risk. The surface level risks of life are education, career, family, home, security in your old age in particular. Society is set up for us to address these, but there's also a deep level risk, which is not spending the time to find ourselves, so to speak. It's a thing. It really is. Or maybe if you're not going to find yourself, you're going to make yourself. Make the man or woman that you, make yourself into the man or woman that you think you want to be. This is a task for the late 20s, 25 to 30 years of age. After college is done, off you go to have a great life adventure. That's coming in a second. That will assuage the deep risk. You'll come back to life at 30, come back to us. Then you're ready to take on the way you've already got the education done, the job, the family, the home and the career, the home and the security. Having satisfied that deep desire, it's a worthwhile activity, especially if you come back scarred up, sunburned, even with a persistent limb. Even, this is interesting, even if you die in the process, it was a worthwhile thing. Next comes sin and damnation. And in my worldview, there are 7 sins. These are falsity, credulity, faith, superstition, dogma, authority, and gossip. This basically means that it's a sin to be untrue or to believe things that are not true. Believe things founded on poor reasons, or to gossip. And so I try to avoid doing all of those things so that I can live a sin-free life as much as possible. But the damnation part, there's no afterlife because we have no soul and there is no God and there is nowhere to go after this. So as a result, the damnation is in the here and now by believing things that are untrue or doing things that are untrue, saying things that are untrue, or gossip. We damned ourselves to a less than optimal life. Next is complete oblivion. As I said several times so far, I don't think that there's anything to follow after life. When the consciousness and our body wink out, that's the end. We're never going to see our loved ones again. We'll never have a chance to reconcile any differences, and we'll never see justice served. So pursue that better living now while we have a chance, because after death, all opportunities are null and void. All chance is wiped clean. Dogs dreaming. Next is the Great Life Adventure. I talked about that already, and when I was talking about the risk of avoiding risk. The Great Life Adventure is that thing that we do that becomes our story. The thing there is I really recommend doing that in the late 20s, from 25 to 30, as I said. But the thing to remember is that you can't really do it later. You can try, but it won't be the same. You can try to have your Great Life Adventure after you retire, but the time has kind of passed to create yourself. You're already created. Your inertia is far too deep. The arc of your life is nearly played out. So the place that you would have been had you had the Great Life Adventure early, the man or woman that you would have come, the way that what that experience did to become part of you would have been, you've lost the chance for that to be so ingrained and instantiated of years of living. Doesn't mean it's not worth doing. You won't even know that it's hollow, but it will be hollower than if you'd done it when you were 27. So I recommend the Great Life Adventure in youth, although you can do it as many times as you want. It's just getting that one in early. That's a key thing. Excuse me. Next comes the season of philosophy, which is a time to record along the way typically after the Great Life Adventure, we have something to say. If we don't have a Great Life Adventure, we might find that we won't have much to say. We'll turn to things like family and patriotism and religion and God as our identity. That's how kind of when we know that we miss that chance, when those are our focuses. Not that any of those things are necessarily bad, but it's like finding a buoy in the sea, close to shore, and clambering up on it and saying, "This is the place." And really, you never really got outside the harbor. You're just clustered on a buoy like a sea lion, bobbing around, ding, ding, praise God, ding, ding, I love America, ding, ding, I'm going to make a family genealogy. None of those things are bad, but there was a great open sea to explore too. Maybe if we'd left the harbor at 26 and sailed for those islands or swam for those islands in the distance, our adventure would be something more than a harbor bob. Well, I know that's the case. It's not a speculation. It's absolutely true. Our later years will be a remembrance of deep ocean depths and wide vistas, a sea without any shore. Nights where the stars were blazing, alone in the empty sea, and maybe found shores with coconuts hanging over the white sands, crabs on the beach, no one around, not even a Robinson Crusoe. That was your island. You found it. And the thoughts of old age are something other than patriotism and love of family, and the worship of God. There's a witness of a universe of far greater depth and uncertainty than any of those canned ideas can contain. That could be yours if you have that great life adventure early. Otherwise, there's nothing wrong with bobbing with the sea lions. Nothing wrong with it at all. It's a satisfaction of its own sort. Well, anyway, I spent a lot of time on that one. I talked about the season of philosophy, right? Yeah, keep the journal open so you can write it down when the words come. And they will come, especially if you have the great life adventure early. And next is the bullseye aim, shooting for the mark and usually missing. The uphill climb, trudge, 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 upward and onward. Arena in utility, keeping our principles at hand, ready to use. And nothing is enough. A reminder to try to get by with less. And then finally, the principle of fun. Remember to have a good time. Have a good time. There's nothing wrong with that. Just don't make that everything. And then also remember the subprinciples of hope, looking forward, and retrospect, looking back. There's a dial that you can do throughout the day. Because the here and now can get tricky sometimes, but so we can put on autopilot and imagine the future or remember the past. It's a delicious thing to do. Okay, that's been my good life. Now, about today. Okay, I'm feeling better. This got me through it. This good life meditation is hard work, but it always does something to, it's like a slap in the face. Hard slap in the face sometimes. Just bam! You're like, geez, Louise. But then you kind of, well, at least I'm awake. That's what it's like. I'll get up now. I'm going to go over and read the Bible. I've got Isaiah, I think I'm Isaiah 37. I'm somewhere in the 30s, late 30s, I think. And then after that, I'll finish uploading this, and then I'll go downstairs. I'll feed the dogs, feed myself, come upstairs, change my shirt, start my day of work. It's going to be a good day. Maybe today I'll draw the throttle back just a little bit, or forward just a little bit, down. Forward is down, because I tend to be a high throttle kind of guy at work. And when I'm done, maybe today, because I don't have too many meetings, maybe I can afford to let the throttle be more at a more manageable thing today. I think that's fine. For me, that's like a hard day's work, not a hard day's work, because that's what's going to burn me out. Has already done so. Thanks for joining me. Have a good day and be safe, but